Excuse me, Sunday evening, and as I was thinking about some of the other survivors I've encountered, people whose website I just found, or the guy that Jenny Moore was trying to help, I just want y'all to know my prayers are all with y'all tonight. I'm pretty much sick of the public per se being anyone who does not know what pedophilia and sexual abuse is all about. It's years ago I heard a Native American guy say, one of our people on First Nations, that what they do to one, they will do to all. Think about this. A lot of us, this abuse went on for years and years and years, and I lost a brother and sister to the side effects of it. They just never recovered. And I don't know why. Maybe the eldest son's still here, but I am. I know this is the year, and God wants me to speak up boldly, but there are some flies in the ointment that have to be touched upon. For instance, there's a crooked sheriff of this county who's now in prison. We won't say his name. We did on the previous one I deleted, but we won't say his name. And this man basically used his office and lots of other people who were powerful in the county to intimidate me. Put me through a false arrest, claiming that I'd made erroneous reports to the police, when in truth I had never lived anywhere in my life where I needed to call the police until I lived in this corrupt little burg. And they did. They false arrested me, took me to prison, took me to jail. My doctor and an alderman came down within minutes to get me out. I went to court 3 times, and I said, I'm not pleading guilty. I'm not. Because it's not true. And the DA, Ever the crook, he's also gone now, but he's working in another county. He's not in jail yet. So he said, and I quote, if you stop talking about your daughter's sexual abuse, we'll drop the charges. Otherwise, we'll have you arrested again. So the suborning of perjury, the false arrest, intimidation of witnesses, violation of my First Amendment is right, and I think the fourth is right to redress against grievance. But there were major civil rights violations, and I was told I had the best civil rights case the county had ever seen. But I also knew that taking that on, there had already been fallout for my family. So, because I had an ovarian tumor that was about to kill me, and I needed to work on that, found another doctor who was honest, and found out that the hospital that we had audited by the feds had literally allowed me to come within 6 months of death, simply because I had spoken out and gotten that hospital audited. And had I not gone to this other place, I'd be dead right now. So that's not the first time I escaped my close calls. I've always felt there was somebody watching over me because, as you well know, anybody who's been through this knows your teen years can be rife with many things. Thank God I avoided a lot of the stuff people get into because of the abuse. But that doesn't mean I didn't do stupid things. I had a love affair with Jack Daniels when I was 20. So bad I got blood poisoning. And I had to heal myself with natural herbs and teas. And, I basically never really recovered until, I was about 50, I'd say. The day I found out what my real ancestry was. Did you see that deer? That was just as I turned around. I got to see it. It was a young doe. Goodness. I love the animals around here. I get off track. What I'm trying to say is that online, a lot of stuff that you go and look at is triggering. And I feel like I have stumbled upon something that might be good for survivors. And I want to know what you guys think of this. What if we had an anonymous channel where we could be totally incognito and people could talk about the side effects, not what happened to us, because that's triggering. We all know that. But the side effects that we deal with, the backlash, the abuse, a place where we can just let our hair down. And I don't know. Tell me what you think of it. Personally, like a lot of other people who are survivors, I haven't trusted anybody since 1963. Trust a few people, but let's put it this way. I don't trust people who wear ties. I spent enough time around them in my childhood, and when I was working, I waited tables on enough of them and bartended and served them drinks. And the thing is when you worship mammon, it's not that money itself is bad or capitalism is bad. What is bad is people not thinking about how their actions affect others, and how if they just practice capitalism with ethics and honesty, maybe, just maybe, we might see some things change. I keep trying to think of common ground, because that's me. I mean, I survived what I survived because I watched other people getting beaten up far worse, and their struggle informed my struggle. If there's one thing I learned in the restaurant business, you learn so much if you open your heart and mind and listen to people. Now, I don't like to talk. I like to listen. And this feels like a monologue, so I'm going to cut it short. Looking for the path of the deer. She was young. She's not even a year old yet, I bet. They're so beautiful. I've had two very strange encounters with deer since I've lived here. One that my neighbor has a picture of is I was walking around the house to take the trash out, and sitting right beside a faux bamboo was a deer. And he stood there and he laid down, and she sat there for, I don't know, I stood there for at least 45 minutes just staring at her. I kept talking to her. I kept saying, "You're okay, honey. You're all right. You're okay." And eventually she got up and she walked around the house, and I quietly tiptoed around the house and followed her. And she ate about 25 feet from me. Deer. She ate about, a little bit, and then I'm standing there by the propane tank, and young deer walks right beside me, turns around and looks at me like, "Hey, it was nice hanging out with you," and walks away. I get goose pimples to this day. Another time I'm out in the garden and little fawn started walking towards me. I'm like, "Hey, where's your mama?" It's just weird. Strange encounters. I have more fun offline than I do online. I think I've said that. And I find peace in the woods and the animals and respect for all of living things. A lot of people say that when I say I want to, I respect all living things, and I think we should be kind to other people. And you must be a liberal, and I'm like, no, I'm a Christian, and I try to live it, not so much proselytize. My son's out there gathering wood. I heard a buck. Bucks snort when you get too close to them. As I was walking on the path here, I heard the buck snort. But the thing about animals is they don't give you a hard time. They just love you unconditionally, kind of like my grandparents loved me unconditionally. And that gave me the courage and the strength and the wherewithal to deal with it. Well, it's what saved me. And their teachings and their truths still hold me up today. It will sound hokey to some people, but I've had proof they watch over me in many different ways. I live out in the country, as you can tell. And I walked out one morning and I found a 1956 penny laying right in my driveway. Nobody had been by, no one had been around for weeks. And my grandmother used to give me coins. I took that as a sign that she was watching. Yeah. I don't believe in contacting the spirit world. That's dangerous. But I do believe that your ancestors watch over you. We are all the product of the love of thousands, if you think about it, going back far enough. And when I did my family's genealogy, of course I can't do all of it because I've got some native stuff I have to pay to find, but what I did find out was that they went through far worse than I did. And I understood who they were and why they became who they became. It was easy to forgive them then. They were a product of generational ritual abuse. They were just a product of that. And the people on one side of my family had been doing it going all the way back to when they were crawling out of caves in the Caucasus, probably. Easy to trace them because of their paleness. And they were hanging with all the rich people. They were people who did deeds for the rich. I imagine there must have been some lawyers. It's interesting, it's a genetic memory. All my life I was fascinated by big buildings and cathedrals and didn't know why. I loved architecture, and then years later I found out my dad was an architectural student. So no matter how much we try to escape our parents, what I've learned is I remember the things my mother did good. Like, she was great at sewing, she was a great cook, she was really good at gardening, and she could play anything on the piano. And when I remember those things, it's like when I went to see her in December. We hadn't seen each other in 20-odd years. I could see her shock, and she couldn't talk because she had a trach in. And I just said, Mom, it's all water under the bridge. I'm just here to say I love you. And it was like 50 years had gone from my shoulders. I guess what I'm saying here is that as hard as it is to forgive, the forgiveness is for us, not for them. And while there are some idiots out there who just don't seem to get a clue, that's not our problem. Forgive them and move on. It's water under the bridge. There's got to be better days ahead. I look at it this way. I know that some of the people I'm talking to have been through hell all their lives, so you know we're all going to heaven because we've already lived in hell. I love you all. Take care. Good night.